Welcome to Grandpa's True Scary Stories, where every story you hear was once real. Tonight's tale is a chilling, true ritual horror called The Last Light Game. If you love true scary stories, urban legends and late-night dares that go too far, make sure to like, subscribe and ring that bell. Because some games don't punish you for losing, they punish you for playing at all. All right, let's begin. I didn't find the ritual online. I made it up. 3 rules, 1 candle, midnight to 3:12 a.m. It started as filler content for a horror forum I run on weekends, something to keep the regulars busy while I pretended I still had control of my life. The weird part? I wrote the post at 11:59 p.m. on a Tuesday. By morning, 19 people had already played it the night before. They sent photos, logs, audio clips of candles breathing, and all of them claimed their flames went out at exactly 3:12 a.m. I told myself it was a coincidence, a trend, a lie that caught fire like dry paper. But a month later, I found a matchstick in my mailbox with my name written on it in black Sharpie. I moderate a tiny corner of the internet called No Sleep Utilities, half creative writing workshop, half ghost hunter fan club. People submit interactive experiments, mirror chants, counting games, haunted sleep apps. Most of it is campfire nonsense. Exactly what I like. That night I was bored and lonely, so I decided to invent my own. I called it The Last Light Game. I liked how it sounded like a bar drink and a confession at the same time. The rules were simple. Draw a chalk circle big enough to sit inside. Place a metal bowl in the center. Put a single unscented candle in the bowl. Write your full name on a matchstick. Exactly at midnight, strike your name and light the candle. Then follow the 3 rules. 1. Don't let the flame leave the bowl. 2. If it flickers 3 times, you have to answer truthfully, whatever asks. 3. Never let it die before 3:12 a.m. For flavor, I added a final line. If you break a rule, the room will remember you. Cute, right? Creepy enough to farm karma, harmless enough to ignore. I posted it at 11:59, hit publish, and went to make tea. When I came back, there were already comments. First one was from a user named Room Forgot You. They'd attached a photo time-stamped 11:58 p.m., 1 minute before I posted. Same setup I described down to the metal bowl, the candle, the chalk ring on a tile floor. Except the matchstick in the photo had my name on it. I messaged Room Forgot You right away. Good edit, I wrote. How'd you fake the timestamp? They replied immediately. You should play your own game. Cute, I typed. Who are you? I'm not the part that matters. That was all I got. I checked the account, no IP data, no browser string, no logs. The profile creation date was tomorrow. Right. Okay. I laughed it off, except the laugh didn't sound like mine. It sounded like someone trying out my laugh, seeing if it fit. That night, I set it up anyway. If I call myself a skeptic and I never test anything, then I'm just a fan with better vocabulary. I cleared a space in the kitchen, tiled floor, cheap rental, an echo that keeps old conversations if you talk soft enough. I drew a chalk ring big enough to sit inside and placed a dented metal mixing bowl in the center. Then I wrote my full name on a wooden match with a half-dead Sharpie, and I set the candle in the bowl. I checked the time, 11:59, and I waited with the kind of stillness you only manage when you've decided you're not going to be afraid. At 12 exactly, I struck the match. It flared like it had been waiting to be real. I touched flame to wick, blew out the stick, and watched the candle stand there, a small, steady white flame, bravely boring. For 5 minutes, nothing. I could have filmed a tutorial on how to waste a night doing nothing. Then, at 12:09, the flame shivered once. Not the playful kind of shiver, more like a dog's skin twitching when a fly lands. "Draft," I said out loud. The windows wheeze in this place, even shut they breathe. At 12:10, it flickered again. I cupped my hands, no movement of air. The room felt like it was holding its own breath. At 12:11, it flickered a third time. Right when I started to feel stupid for staring, the cold stove behind me made that clicking noise, like someone gently trying all the burner knobs, with just the tips of their fingers. The sound came from inside the ring, not outside. I know how dumb that sentence sounds, but I've slept on floors. I know where sound lands. This landed where my knees were. "All right," I said, because I wrote the rules, and I'm not going to be a coward about my own text. 3 flickers means tell the truth, right? So, ask. The flame leaned. Not the wick, the flame, like it had a spine. "And the kitchen radio, this blocky old thing I keep for nostalgia and never plug in, clicked and hissed to life. No station, just room hiss and wire breath. What did you do to her?" I recognized the voice. You can't mistake the voice of the person who's seen you at your kindest and your worst. My ex. Words I hadn't heard from her in years, but the tone was exactly the same. Careful, holding something back, waiting to see if I was going to say the thing I never want to say. I didn't do anything. Fine. Okay. I left when she asked me to stay. I picked work. I wanted to finish an episode. And yeah, I hurt her. I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the cabinets with the candle and watched it like a parent watching a fever. Hands useless, eyes dry. The clock slid to 1, then 1:30. I tested Rule 1. I put my palm over the bowl, close enough to feel heat, not close enough to be dramatic. The warmth pressed my skin like a warning you give a friend on the edge of a bad idea. Don't. I nudged the bowl a half-inch toward the chalk boundary. The flame guttered in a way that had nothing to do with air. It looked offended. I eased it back, palms up, like I was apologizing to a cat. At 1:03, the flame bowed toward the hallway and flickered 3 times in a pattern like a knock. Knock, 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 knock. A rhythm I didn't recognize until I did. It's the way my dad used to knock when he didn't want to wake anybody up. Quiet, polite, like he was asking the door if it was busy. Truth. Ask. "What did you take that wasn't yours?" I answered. I told the little truth nobody likes to admit. The borrowed thing I never returned. The story I retold like it was mine. The kindness I pocketed and called cleverness. The flame steadied like it approved of pain, measured in grams. By 2 my forum thread was an anthill. People sent shaky videos, time-lapses of their chalk rings, audio clips of rooms like mine. The details were weirdly consistent. Everyone said 312 felt like the top of a hill. Everyone said the flame leaned toward things that moved without moving. A few said, "It asked for the truth, but not to embarrass me. More like it wanted me to know I was already doing a good job of that." One user, handle Talk Less Light More, sent me an audio file they'd recorded in a different city. At 1:17, there's a soft tap on their table and then a single chirp from their smoke alarm. No smoke, no warning. In my kitchen, at that exact second, my smoke alarm chirped once. It's been dead for a week. No battery. It chirped anyway, a perfect twin on the timeline. I looked up at the little yellow-eyed disc on my ceiling like it had just talked out of turn in class. I told myself what any reasonable adult tells himself when the room misbehaves. Coincidence. Non-simultaneous, misremembered confirmation bias. We're good at hearing patterns where there's just noise. That's half of art and all of being human. I held on to that for as long as I could. Which is to say, not long. At 2:44 a.m, my flame pointed down the hall again, thin, flat, like a compass needle, deciding something bad for me. I whispered, "Truth," because at this point my throat knew the shape of the word, and it came out like a reflex. "Whom did you leave waiting?" I knew who. I said her name. It didn't feel like confession. It felt like my mouth surrendering inventory, name, date, the specific hour I was 5 minutes late to something that didn't have a second chance. I considered ending it right there. Breaking Rule 3. Blowing the candle out, drawing the chalk across the floor with my foot like rubbing a line through a signature. But the rules said never let the candle die before 3:12, and I was tired of making the kind of mess you clean up with years. So I kept it alive. I fed it with patience I didn't know I had. I even cupped my hands when it needed help because I understood. Sometimes a little calm air makes the fire stand up straighter. Meanwhile, the thread turned into a small religion. People who didn't read anything except receipts were writing paragraphs. I watched 100 hands film the same ring, the same bowl, the same brave little flame. And every time someone filmed it flicker 3 times, there was this breath after, like they were about to dive. You can explain it. God knows I tried. Old hinges, thermal expansion. We narrate the physics. We forgive the parts of the house that aren't performing. At 3:03, the room got colder in the way rooms do when the night has made up its mind. The candle stood tall and completely unbothered, then bowed like a dancer, acknowledging someone across from them. And a second flame appeared in the bowl. There wasn't a second wick. I hadn't snuck one in for showmanship. It was just there, thin and blue, like a gas pilot, breathing next to mine. The 4th rule walked into the kitchen like it owned the place. If 2 flames burn in the same circle, one of you won't leave. "All right," I said. "Okay, is that me?" I wasn't expecting an answer. The second flame flickered 3 times. "Truth." "What happens if I step out?" I asked. "If I leave the circle?" "Stay," she said. "Please." I waited. That's all the game really asks for. Patience, and the part of you that can't walk away before a number turns. 3:12 arrived the way it always does, slow, then suddenly. When it did, both flames snapped into needles. The bowl pinged, just a small metal tick contracting from heat, and the blue flame went out. Mine remained, looking nothing like victory and everything like obligation. I exhaled. The room took a breath of me it had been owed and returned nothing. The chalk ring remained exactly where I'd drawn it, bright white on cheap tile, guilty as a line you tell yourself you won't cross again. I should have felt relief. Instead, the quiet had weight. The kind that stays when you turn lights on. I stood up, stiff, blew the candle out the way you blow out a birthday you didn't want, and put the bowl on the counter. The match I'd used, my name in black marker, had stuck to the bottom with a crescent of wax. I peeled it free and stuck it under a magnet like a reminder you leave for your future self when you're trying to become someone who remembers things. I slept in a chair. The bed felt like a room I hadn't earned yet. Around dawn, I woke to a tiny bell sound, like a front desk. One polite tap. Just enough to prove the night had been punctual. When I checked the thread, the PDF I hadn't written had been updated. A fifth rule had appeared in the footer, small and polite, and absolutely sure of itself. 1. The room will keep one truth you tell and use it to open you later. I didn't add it. No one copped to it. The comment history said it had been there all along. Explainable, if you need it to be. Phantom edits, cache weirdness. Me not remembering my own draft because I was tired. Sure. Then afternoon came, and the game came with it. I went to leave for a coffee I didn't need. The front door wouldn't latch. It sat against the frame with the stubborn, lazy arrogance of a cat that knows you won't push. I tried the old tricks, lift and shove, shoulder bump, swear at it like it owes you rent. The bolt met the strike plate and just thought about it. "Really?" I said to the door. "We're doing this?" Out of annoyance, not a plan, I whispered her name. Just the first syllable, soft. The latch clicked like I'd entered a pin. I stood there stupid, hand on the knob, replaying the sound like you replay a voicemail you're going to regret keeping. Then I opened and shut it 10 times like a madman. No latch. Whispered again. Click. The kind of pattern your brain will do anything not to call a pattern. Please return your matches. I stared at the screen like it had changed languages. Then I looked at the magnet on the fridge. The match with my name. The wax crescent stuck to it like a little half moon. "Return them where?" I messaged. "You know," they wrote. I didn't, but my hands acted like I did. I set the match on the counter by the bowl. The air got the tiniest bit easier to breathe, the way a room does when somebody finally says the thing nobody wanted to say. Users started reporting daytime side effects too. Front doors that wouldn't latch until they told a small truth out loud. Phones that unlocked when they admitted something mean they'd said in their head. Lamps that flickered 3 times precisely at 3:12 p.m. if the person had lied online that morning. Confirmation bias, I typed in a sticky note to myself. Algorithmic priming. People acting out rules to feel less alone. I read the note back, and it sounded exactly like what someone says when he knows the door isn't going to close until he tells it the right name. By the second evening, my thread felt like a neighborhood of people standing in their kitchens, each of us sitting inside a little chalk ring nobody could see from the street. We were all saying truth at furniture, and the furniture was answering by obeying. I prepared to write a tear-down post. It's a head game. You're scaring yourselves. Don't ruin your flaws with chalk. I even wrote the first paragraph. Games don't work, people do. Start your candle at midnight. This time, don't sit alone. Not who. What? I looked at the bowl. I looked at the match with my name. I looked at the quiet that had started to feel like a held breath. I told myself I wouldn't play. Then I bought a fresh candle anyway, as if not reusing the old one was a moral victory. At 11:55, I redrew the ring. The old chalk still ghosted the tile. I traced it like a child retraces a parent's signature. I set the new candle in the bowl. I wrote my name again on a new matchstick, like signing a contract to the same bad terms. When midnight ticked, I lit the wick. The flame rose as if it had done this before. Maybe not with me, but with someone shaped like me. I sat cross-legged with my back against the cabinet. Then I did something I hadn't done the night before. I took a second, unused candle from the drawer and set it on the counter outside the ring. Unlit, just there, just in case the rule nobody wrote had an opinion. At 12:22, nothing. At 12:40, a single flinch from the flame. At 12:58, the kind of stillness that tells you the hour is making a fist. At 1:03, again, the knock rhythm. 1, 2, then 3. "Truth," I said. "Ask." The radio stayed dead. The phone stayed blank. A different sound came instead. The soft, shy pop a candle makes when a tiny wax bubble bursts. It came from outside the circle. I turned. The unused candle on the counter had developed a tiny bead of liquid wax at the tip of its unburned wick. "No," I said immediately. A childish word that always thinks it's earned authority. "No, no, no." The bead fell, just a small tear of wax rolling down a wick that should have been bone dry. My flame inside the bowl flared like it was excited to meet someone. I looked at the clock. 2:02. Between this and 3:12 is the part of the night where everything in the house gets louder because it's decided to stop pretending you're in charge. "All right," I said to the bowl, because I was tired of pretending I didn't talk to things. "If there's going to be a second flame, it stays with me." Inside the bowl, my flame straightened. "Truth," I said, because I needed a sentence I could control. "Why did you invent the game?" "Because I wanted to feel in charge of something," I said, "because I wanted a room to obey me." "Okay," I said to whatever listens in old apartments and new rules. "Okay. If you're going to do this, you do it in here." "Which one of us isn't leaving?" I asked the night, quietly, so I wouldn't sound dramatic to myself. The blue flame flickered 3 times. Truth. Of course. I looked at the clock. The minute hand was so close to 3:12, it felt like the second hand was pushing it with its shoulder. "Stay." "Please." I didn't move. That was the rule. You don't move before the end when you've promised to make it to the number. You don't burn out early to feel brave. You sit there with what you brought into the ring. When 3:11 crawled over to 3:12, both flames drew thin together. The blue one cut first, a clean little string snuff sound like the end of a word. Mine held a heartbeat longer, like a person letting someone else through a door before them, and then shortened to a taut, bright pin. The bowl pinged. The kitchen exhaled. The chalk ring stayed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like someone who'd been measured and found just barely acceptable. I stood, stiff from the floor, and blew the candle out. I put the bowl on the counter. My name-stuck match slid under the magnet like a tongue returning to a quiet place. I closed my eyes. The kind of sleep that followed wasn't rest. It was an absence. At 9:10 a.m., daylight, perfectly normal, the front door refused to latch again. I said her name. It clicked. The day kept going. People commented with recipes and jokes and soft little admissions no one will read again. I wrote my tear-down paragraph and deleted it. I went to the kitchen and ran my fingertip along the chalk ring. I won't say the name out loud. The room doesn't need any more help. But if you think you know whose it is, you probably do. I messaged, "Room forgot you." I returned my match. They replied, "The house keeps ledgers." I typed, "What happens now?" The answer came back as a photo. My kitchen, my bowl, my chalk ring, and in the bowl 2 candles, one used, one new, side by side like twins that can't agree who was born first. "You're ready to teach," they wrote. I stared at the screen. I stared at the ring. I stared at the door that loves a password. The blue flame is a friendlier colour than you expect. It looks like a promise that means well. When I woke the next night, the air already smelled like burnt matches. I hadn't lit anything. The room just remembered. The chalk ring still traced the floor, faint but intact. And that new match, the one with her name, waited in the bowl like a guest who'd let themselves in. I told myself I wouldn't play. Then I checked the clock. 11:56. That's how these things get you. They make you curious enough to forget you're scared. I sat down inside the faded circle just to look. By 11:58, I'd already fetched the candle. At 11:59, the match in the bowl rolled toward me. I said, "Fine," because that's what you say to guilt when you know it's going to win. I struck it. The name flared, her name, then the wick caught. The first seconds felt normal. Then, somewhere in the apartment, a cupboard door clicked. And another, each one a small, polite sound, moving closer. I told myself it was pipes, or heat, or the memory of heat. But when the fridge magnet holding my old match slipped off and hit the floor, I knew the game hadn't ended at 3:12. It had just been waiting for the next round. The flame didn't flicker once, twice, or thrice. It pulsed, a slow breathing rhythm, steady as a heartbeat that wasn't mine. On the counter, the old bowl rattled against the tile. Inside it, the wax of the first candle was soft again, like it had never cooled. I whispered, "Truth." A voice, not cruel, not kind, answered from the bowl. "Do you still think you made it up?" I wanted to say yes, that it was all coincidence, like always. But lying to something that knows you feels like stealing from yourself. So I said, "No." The flame rose taller, content. Then it split. Not blue this time, but white at the core, two tongues of fire leaning apart like quotation marks around the word me. "You wanted control. Take it." My pulse hit the rhythm of the flame. 3, 2, 1, truth. I leaned forward, breath trembling. "Which one of us gets to leave?" I asked. Both flames flickered 3 times. "Truth," I said. "Who do you think you are?" The words crawled under my ribs like something alive. Because the longer I watched the copy across from me, the less certain I was which side of the candle I'd been on when this started. The clock said 3:11 and 40 seconds. 30-something heartbeats until the game decided. The air thickened, paraffin, sweat, static. The copy smiled the faint, tired smile I reserve for my webcam before I pretend I'm fine. It mouthed something. I mouthed it back. Both of us said the same word at the same time. "Stay." I gasped. My lungs felt borrowed. The remaining flame wasn't mine anymore. It leaned away from me toward the dark side of the kitchen, and for a moment I saw, no, felt, someone else sitting there, catching their breath the way I just had. Sunlight came like an apology. The chalk ring was gone, scrubbed clean somehow, though I hadn't moved. The bowl sat empty except for one match, blank, unmarked. I struck it anyway, it didn't light. When I checked my forum, the thread was gone. The entire site redirected to a new page titled "The Last Light Game, Official Rules." It looked professional, clean, and at the bottom a note, compiled by Moderator ID, "Room forgot you. Next instructor, pending approval." The username field was filled in already. Mine. I've stopped fighting it. People send me their results. I tell them it's fake, like I'm supposed to. But every file name arrives stamped with 3:12 a.m. even when their clocks say otherwise. Sometimes the camera on my phone flips on by itself at night and shows a man asleep at a desk, candle burning beside him. The man looks a lot like me, except he still smiles before he speaks. He always ends the same way. Truth. Then the video cuts, and the room flickers 3 times. I haven't struck another match. I don't have to. There's always one waiting, already warm. Thank you for listening to my story. If this tale kept you awake tonight, like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because there are many more true scary stories, ritual legends, and real horror tales waiting past midnight. This was Grandpa's True Scary Stories, where every whisper hides a truth, and every truth hides a nightmare.